Craig Freeman's diplomatic training hadn't prepared him for this. As he stood before the Yadaran princess, her request echoing in his ears, he knew the fate of humanity's expansion efforts hung in the balance, and it all depended on what was between his legs. The year was 2285, and humanity had established a thriving colony on Epsilon Prime. Craig, a 28-year-old diplomat, arrived at the Yadaran embassy for what he thought would be a routine trade negotiation. The Yadarans, an advanced alien race, offered technology that could accelerate human colonization efforts by decades. It should have been straightforward. But nothing about this day was turning out as expected. Princess Merrick, the lead Yadaran negotiator, greeted Craig in the embassy's atrium. Her blue skin shimmered under the artificial lighting, iridescent eyes fixed on him with unnerving intensity. At 22 years old, she exuded confidence beyond her years. "Welcome, Diplomat Freeman," Merrick said, her translator conveying a musical lilt to her words. "I trust you're prepared to discuss the trade agreement?" Craig nodded, forcing a smile. "Of course, Your Highness. I believe this partnership will greatly benefit both our species." Merrick's head tilted, a gesture Craig had learned indicated curiosity among Yadarans. "Indeed. But before we proceed, there's a matter of biology we must address." Craig blinked, caught off guard. "Biology?" "Yes," Merrick replied. "Specifically, human reproductive methods. Our research has been inconclusive, and I find myself quite fascinated." Craig's mind raced. He knew Yadarans reproduced through a complex spore-based system, but he hadn't expected it to be relevant to trade talks. "I'm not sure I understand the connection, Your Highness." Merrick's eyes narrowed. "To forge a lasting alliance, we must understand each other completely. Our biological differences are fundamental to who we are as species." Craig attempted to steer the conversation back to safer waters. "Perhaps we could focus on the economic aspects first." "No," Merrick interjected, her tone leaving no room for argument. "This knowledge is crucial. In fact, I'd say the success of our agreement hinges on it." She paused, letting the implication sink in. "I propose a private meeting to discuss the matter in detail." Craig's throat went dry. He understood the stakes all too well. Humanity's future expansion could be secured or shattered in the next few moments. Cultural misunderstandings had derailed interspecies relations before. But this was unprecedented. "Very well," Craig managed, his voice steadier than he felt. "I'll do my best to explain." Merrick's lips curved into what might have been a smile. "Excellent. Follow me." As they walked through the winding corridors of the embassy, Craig's mind whirled. How could he possibly explain human reproduction in a way that wouldn't offend or confuse the Yadarans? And what if their physiological differences were too great to bridge? They reached a secluded chamber, its walls adorned with strange, pulsating plants. Craig assumed were part of the Yadaran reproductive cycle. Merrick sealed the door behind them, then turned to Craig with an expectant look. "Now, Diplomat Freeman," she said, her eyes gleaming with anticipation. "Show me what's between your legs." Craig took a deep breath, acutely aware that the future of human-Yadaran relations rested on what happened next. He had to get this right, for humanity's sake. Craig's heart pounded as he faced Princess Merrick's expectant gaze. The weight of humanity's future pressed down on him, making each breath a struggle. He cleared his throat, searching for the right words. "Your Highness, human reproduction is complex. Perhaps we could start with a more general overview." Merrick's iridescent eyes narrowed. "No, Diplomat Freeman, I require specifics. Show me." Realizing there was no delicate way to approach this, Craig began to explain human anatomy in clinical terms. He described the basic differences between male and female bodies, the process of fertilization and gestation. However, Merrick's expression grew increasingly frustrated as he spoke. "Your words are insufficient," she interrupted. "I need visual confirmation." Craig's mouth went dry. "Visual confirmation?" Merrick nodded emphatically. "Yes, remove your garments. I must see for myself." Swallowing hard, Craig weighed his options. The fate of human-Yadaran relations hung in the balance. With trembling hands, he began to unbutton his shirt. "I'll show you basic human anatomy," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "But please understand, this is highly unusual for my species." As Craig's shirt fell away, Merrick leaned forward, her eyes wide with fascination. She circled him slowly, examining his exposed chest and abdomen. "Fascinating," she murmured. "Where are your bioluminescent communication patches?" "We don't have those," Craig explained, fighting the urge to cover himself. "Humans communicate primarily through vocal means and facial expressions." Myrick's hand hovered near his skin, not quite touching. "And your reproductive organs? How do they function without external spores?" Craig took a deep breath, steeling himself for what came next. "Our reproductive process occurs internally. The male introduces genetic material into the female's body, where fertilization takes place." Myrick's head tilted sharply. "Show me these organs," she demanded. Closing his eyes briefly, Craig reached for his belt. He knew he was crossing a line, but the importance of this moment outweighed his personal discomfort. Slowly, he lowered his trousers, revealing himself to the Yadaran princess. Myrick's reaction was immediate and intense. She gasped, her iridescent eyes widening to an impossible degree. For several long moments, she stood in stunned silence, processing what she saw. "This is unexpected," she finally managed, her voice a mix of shock and wonder. "How does—" Her question was cut short by a sudden blaring alarm. The chamber's door burst open, and a group of Yadaran security personnel stormed in, led by a tall, imposing figure Craig assumed was their commander. "Princess Merrick!" the commander shouted, his translator barely keeping up with his rapid speech. "Are you harmed?" Merrick started to respond, but the commander's eyes had already locked onto Craig's state of undress. His face contorted with rage. "Restrain the human," he ordered. "He has assaulted the princess." Before Craig could react, strong hands seized him. He struggled against their grip, desperately trying to explain. "No, wait, this is a misunderstanding," he shouted. "Princess Merrick, please tell them." Merrick stepped forward, her voice rising above the chaos. "Commander Zax, release him at once. This interaction was consensual and for scientific purposes." But her words seemed to only confuse the commander further. He glared at Craig with undisguised hostility. "Scientific purposes?" Zax spat. "Exposing oneself to royalty is a grave offense, regardless of intent. The human will be detained until we determine the full extent of this incident." As the security personnel began to drag him away, Craig caught a final glimpse of Merrick. The princess looked distraught, clearly torn between her scientific curiosity and the unfolding diplomatic disaster. "Princess, please!" Craig called out. "Contact Ambassador Lauren. She can explain everything." But his pleas were cut short as he was roughly escorted from the chamber. The corridors of the embassy blurred past as Craig was marched towards the detention area. His mind raced, trying to comprehend how quickly the situation had spiraled out of control. They reached a small, sterile room with a force field for a door. Craig was unceremoniously shoved inside, his protests falling on deaf ears. As the field hummed to life, sealing him in, he slumped against the wall, the gravity of the situation sinking in. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours. Craig paced the small cell, replaying the events in his mind, searching for a way to salvage the situation. The future of human-Yadaran relations now teetered on the edge of disaster, all because of a cultural misunderstanding and his own naive compliance. Suddenly, a commotion outside caught his attention. He pressed close to the force field, straining to hear. A familiar voice cut through the noise. Ambassador Lauren had arrived. "I demand to see Diplomat Freeman immediately." Lauren's authoritative tone carried down the corridor. "This is a grave misunderstanding that must be rectified at once." As the voices drew nearer, Craig straightened his posture and smoothed his rumpled clothes. He knew that the next few moments would be crucial. Whatever happened next would determine not just his fate, but the future of humanity's presence in this sector of space. The force field flickered, and Ambassador Lauren appeared, her face a mask of controlled diplomatic calm. Behind her stood Commander Zax, Princess Merrick, and a retinue of human and Yadaran officials. The tension in the air was palpable. Lauren's eyes met Craig's, conveying a silent message. "Stay calm. Let me handle this." She turned to address the assembled group, her voice steady and measured. Now, let's discuss this situation rationally and find a peaceful resolution. Ambassador Lauren's voice cut through the tense atmosphere like a laser. Let's be clear. This incident stems from a cultural misunderstanding, not malicious intent. Her gaze swept over the assembled group, lingering on Commander Zax's scowling face. Diplomat Freeman was engaged in a scientific exchange at Princess Merrick's request. Zax's mandibles clicked in agitation. Regardless of intent, exposing oneself to royalty is a grave offense in Yadarin culture, Lauren finished smoothly, just as it would be deeply offensive in human culture to reject a royal's direct request for information. She turned to Merrick. Isn't that correct, Your Highness? Merrick nodded, her iridescent eyes darting between Lauren and Zax. The ambassador speaks truth. I initiated the interaction for scientific purposes. Craig watched the exchange, hardly daring to breathe. The force field hummed softly, a constant reminder of his precarious position. After several tense moments, Zax's posture relaxed marginally. Very well, the human may be released, but this incident will be noted in our diplomatic records. The force field dissipated with a faint crackle. Craig stepped out, his legs unsteady after hours of confinement. Before he could speak, Lauren fixed him with a stern look that promised a thorough dressing down later. Diplomat Freeman, Princess Merrick, please join me in the conference room, Lorenz said, her tone leaving no room for argument. We have much to discuss. As they walked, Craig felt the weight of stares from both human and Yadarin personnel. The embassy corridors seemed longer and more oppressive than ever before. When they finally reached the conference room, Lauren sealed the door behind them. The ambassador's carefully composed expression cracked, revealing a mixture of frustration and concern. Craig, what were you thinking? You've jeopardized years of careful negotiation. Craig opened his mouth to defend himself, but Merrick spoke first. The fault is mine, Ambassador. I pushed for information beyond diplomatic norms. Lauren raised an eyebrow. While that may be true, Diplomat Freeman should have known better than to comply without proper clearance. She sighed, pinching the bridge of her nose. However, what's done is done. We need to focus on moving forward. Marek's head tilted in that now familiar gesture of curiosity. Perhaps we could establish a formal cultural exchange program to prevent such misunderstandings in the future? Before Lauren could respond, a sharp chime filled the room. A holographic display materialized above the conference table, showing a human technician with a panicked expression. Ambassador Lauren, we've detected a massive solar flare heading towards the Epsilon system. Our colony on the moon doesn't have sufficient resources to protect itself fully. Craig's stomach dropped. The colony housed thousands of people, including many of his friends from the diplomatic corps. Marek stepped forward, her bioluminescent patches pulsing with intensity. We can help. Yadarin's shielding technology could protect both our installations. Lauren's eyes widened. You'd share such advanced technology with us? As a gesture of goodwill, Merrick nodded, and to demonstrate the benefits of our alliance. Craig saw an opportunity. Ambassador, if I may, I propose a joint human Yadarin team to implement the shielding. Princess Merrick and I could lead the effort. Our recent experience makes us uniquely qualified to bridge our cultural gaps. The door hissed open, revealing Commander Zax. His expression made it clear he had been listening. Absolutely not. I will lead the Yadarin team myself. The human can assist under my direct supervision. Lauren considered for a moment, then nodded. Agreed. Craig, you'll act as our liaison. Dr. Ilara Chen will join you. Her expertise in solar phenomena will be crucial. As preparations began, Craig found himself thrust into a whirlwind of activity. The human and Yadarin teams eyed each other warily as they boarded the shuttle bound for the moon base. Tensions crackled like static electricity. Dr. Ilara Chen cornered Craig as they stowed their gear. Diplomat Freeman, I require clarification on Yadarin physiological responses to rapid pressure changes. Their circulatory system is quite fascinating, but I'm concerned about potential complications during our descent. Craig winced inwardly at her blunt tone. Dr. Chen, perhaps we could discuss this more discreetly? But Alara was already approaching a group of Yadarin technicians, her voice carrying clearly through the shuttle bay. "Excuse me, but could you explain the function of your tertiary heart? I have several hypotheses about its role in—" "Dr. Chen," Craig interrupted, pulling her aside, "we need to be more sensitive in our inquiries. Remember, we're guests here." Alara blinked, genuinely confused. "But knowledge is the foundation of cooperation. How can we work together if we don't understand each other?" Before Craig could respond, Commander Zax's voice boomed through the shuttle's comm system. "All personnel, prepare for launch. We have a narrow window to implement the shielding before the solar flare hits." As the shuttle rumbled to life, Craig caught Princess Merrick's eye across the bay. She offered a small nod, a gesture of solidarity amidst the chaos. He returned it, acutely aware of the challenges that lay ahead. The shuttle broke free of the embassy's docking clamps, accelerating towards Epsilon Prime's glittering moon. Craig stared out the viewport, watching the curvature of the alien world fall away beneath them. The fate of two species now rested on their ability to overcome their differences and work together. Little did they know, hidden among the Yadarin crew, a saboteur was already setting their plan in motion. The real test of human Yadarin cooperation was about to begin, with the lives of an entire colony hanging in the balance. The shuttle's descent towards Epsilon Prime's moon was tense and silent. Craig's eyes darted between Princess Merrick, Commander Zax, and Dr. Chen, acutely aware of the delicate balance they needed to maintain. As they touched down on the lunar surface, the urgency of their mission became palpable. The moon base loomed before them, a sprawling complex of interconnected domes and structures. As they disembarked, the mixed team of humans and Yadarins moved with purpose, each acutely aware of the ticking clock. Inside the base's main control room, screens flickered to life, displaying the approaching solar flare. The massive surge of energy hurtled towards them, a silent threat visible only through the cold calculations of their sensors. "We have approximately 4 hours before impact," a human technician announced, his voice tight with stress. Commander Zax's mandibles clicked as he issued rapid-fire orders in his native tongue. The Yadarin team sprang into action, unpacking their shielding technology with practiced efficiency. Craig found himself working alongside Merrick, their shared experience from earlier creating an unspoken understanding between them. As they calibrated a delicate piece of Yadarin equipment, Craig noticed Zax watching them, his compound eyes narrowing with suspicion. Across the room, Dr. Chen's voice rose above the din. "This power coupling is completely incompatible with your shield generator," she stated bluntly to a Yadarin technician. "We'll need to reconfigure the entire grid." The Yadarin's bioluminescent patches flashed in agitation. "Impossible. Our systems are designed to specific tolerances. Any alteration could compromise the shield's integrity." Chen's response was immediate and undiplomatic. "Then your shield won't function at all. The energy requirements—" "Dr. Chen," Craig interjected, moving to defuse the situation, "perhaps we could find a way to adapt our systems instead." The next hours were a blur of feverish activity. Craig and Dr. Chen worked tirelessly to modify the human power systems, while Merrick coordinated with her team to recalibrate the Yadarin technology. The two groups moved in a complex dance, alternating between moments of breakthrough and frustrating setbacks. As they entered the final stage of preparations, Craig felt a surge of hope. They were cutting it close, but it seemed they might actually pull this off. Then, without warning, an explosion rocked the base. Alarms blared as smoke filled the air. Craig stumbled, nearly falling before Merrick steadied him. Through the chaos, he saw Commander Zax barking orders, organizing a response team. "Sabotage!" Zax growled, his translator struggling to convey the full weight of his anger. "One of our own." The implications hit Craig like a physical blow. If the Yadarins had infiltrators willing to risk an entire colony, the situation was far more volatile than they'd realized. Time seemed to blur as they raced to assess and repair the damage. With less than an hour before the flare hit, they gathered in the control room, faces grim. "The explosion damaged critical connections between our systems and yours," a Yadarin technician reported. "We can't complete the integration in time." The room fell silent, the weight of impending disaster hanging heavy in the air. Craig's mind raced, considering and discarding options until a desperate idea took shape. What if we could bridge the gap ourselves? He asked, voice barely above a whisper. All eyes turned to him as he explained his plan. Using their bodies as biological conductors to link the human and Yadarin systems directly. It was risky, potentially fatal, but it might be their only chance. Absolutely not, Commander Zax declared. The energy surge would kill you instantly. But Merrick stepped forward, her iridescent eyes locked on Craig. Not necessarily. My Yadarin physiology might help stabilize the connection. Together, we might survive long enough to activate the shield. Dr. Chen's objections were immediate and vehement, but Craig could see the calculations running behind her eyes. She knew, as they all did, that this was their last hope. As the final minutes ticked away, Craig and Merrick positioned themselves between the two systems. Technicians attached a web of sensors and conduits to their bodies, the cold metal a stark reminder of what was at stake. Craig met Merrick's gaze one last time. No words were needed, the shared look conveyed everything. Together they reached out and made the final connections. Pain exploded through Craig's body, every nerve ending on fire. He heard Merrick's gasp beside him, felt her hand grasp his. Through the haze of agony, he was dimly aware of shouted orders, of systems humming to life. Then blackness. Craig drifted in and out of consciousness, catching fragments of sensation and sound, the hiss of medical equipment, the murmur of worried voices, a hand holding his, cool and alien yet comforting. When he finally opened his eyes, the harsh light of the medical bay assaulted his senses. He turned his head, wincing at the movement, and saw Merrick in the adjacent bed. She was unconscious, surrounded by a mix of human and Yadarin medical devices. Dr. Chen appeared in his field of vision, her usual brusqueness tempered by obvious concern. "Don't try to move," she advised. "Your body has undergone significant trauma." Craig tried to speak, but his throat was raw. Chen seemed to anticipate his question. "The shield held," she said. "The colony is safe. But you and the princess, there have been complications." As Chen explained the situation, Craig's mind reeled. The energy surge had altered their physiologies in ways the medical team was still struggling to understand. And beyond the walls of the medical bay, the political landscape was shifting rapidly. Commander Zax entered the room, his posture markedly different from before. He approached Craig's bed, mandibles working as if struggling to find the right words. "Your actions have given me much to consider," Zax said finally. "Perhaps there is more to be gained from cooperation than I had believed." As Craig processed this, alarms began to sound from Merrick's bed. Medical staff rushed in, their urgent voices mixing with the beep of machines. In that moment, watching the frantic efforts to save Merrick's life, Craig realized that the true test of human-Yadarin relations was only just beginning. Craig's vision swam as he fought to stay conscious, the world around him fading in and out of focus. The last thing he saw before succumbing to darkness was Merrick's still form, surrounded by a flurry of medical activity. When Craig finally regained consciousness, his body felt strange, as if it were humming with an unfamiliar energy. He blinked, trying to clear his vision, and was startled to see a faint blue glow emanating from his arm. "Ah, you're awake," Dr. Chen's voice came from nearby. "Try not to move too much. Your body has undergone significant changes." Craig turned his head, wincing at the effort. Dr. Chen stood beside his bed, her usual stern expression softened by a hint of concern. Behind her, he could see Merrick in the adjacent bed, still unconscious but surrounded by a mix of human and Yadarin medical equipment. "What happened?" Craig managed to croak out, his throat dry and raw. Dr. Chen's eyes darted to his arm, then back to his face. "The energy surge from the shield activation has caused some unexpected alterations to your physiology. You've developed bioluminescent patches, similar to those of the Yadarins." Craig's eyes widened as he lifted his arm, examining the softly glowing patches of skin. "How is this possible?" "We're still studying the full effects," Dr. Chen replied, her scientific curiosity evident in her tone. "But it appears the energy surge caused a partial merger of your DNA with Yadarin genetic material. You're not the only one affected either." She gestured towards Merrick's bed. Craig could now see that patches of the princess's typically blue skin had taken on a more human-like pigmentation. Before Craig could ask more questions, a commotion at the door drew their attention. Ambassador Lauren strode in, his face a mix of relief and concern. "Craig, thank goodness you're awake," Lauren said, approaching the bed. "Your actions have had quite an impact back on Epsilon Prime. The successful SHIELD deployment has shifted public opinion. Many are now in favor of closer cooperation between our species." Craig struggled to sit up, his new bioluminescent patches pulsing with the effort. "That's good news," he managed. Commander Zax entered the room, his compound eyes sweeping over the scene. "Indeed," he said, his translator conveying a tone of grudging respect. "Your bravery has given us much to consider. I have proposed a formal alliance between humans and Yadarans to my superiors." As if on cue, Merrick began to stir in her bed. The medical team rushed to her side, monitoring her vital signs as she slowly regained consciousness. What's happening to me?" Merrick's voice was weak but filled with confusion as she looked at her changed skin. Dr. Chen moved to Merrick's bedside, explaining the situation as she had to Craig. As Merrick processed the information, her eyes widened with a mix of fear and fascination. "I feel different," Merrick said, flexing her fingers. "Sensations I've never experienced before." Craig watched as Merrick easily pushed herself up to a sitting position, her movements seeming more fluid and powerful than before. Dr. Chen's eyes lit up with scientific interest. "Fascinating," she muttered, making notes on her datapad. "It appears the energy surge has created a unique hybrid physiology in both of you. This could lead to groundbreaking medical advancements and improved interspecies understanding." As Craig and Merrick continued to explore their new abilities, Craig experimenting with communicating through his bioluminescent patterns, and Merrick marveling at her newfound strength, Ambassador Lauren and Commander Zax discussed the broader implications of these developments. "We should transfer them to a specialized research facility on Epsilon Prime," Lauren suggested. "Their condition could be the key to deepening our alliance." Zax nodded in agreement, but his posture remained tense. "We must also be cautious. There are still those among my people who oppose cooperation with humans. This new development could make Craig and Merrick targets." As if to underscore Zax's words, a subtle shift in the ambient lighting caught Craig's attention. His newly heightened senses picked up on something amiss. "Wait," Craig said, his bioluminescent patches pulsing with urgency. "Something's wrong." Before anyone could react, the lights in the medical bay flickered and died. In the sudden darkness, Craig's glowing patches illuminated the room with an eerie blue light. The hiss of a door sliding open was followed by the sound of multiple footsteps entering the room. "Intruders!" Zax shouted, his mandibles clicking in alarm. Chaos erupted in the medical bay. Shadowy figures moved with practiced efficiency, attempting to subdue the occupants. Craig felt a surge of energy course through his body as adrenaline kicked in, his bioluminescent patches flaring brightly. Merrick leapt from her bed with unexpected agility, her enhanced strength allowing her to grapple with one of the attackers. Craig focused, willing his bioluminescent patches to flash in a pattern that triggered the base's alarm system. As klaxons blared, the intruders realized their plan had gone awry. They produced advanced weapons, their intentions clear. They would take Craig and Merrick by force if necessary. "Get behind me!" Zax ordered, positioning himself between the hybrid patients and their would-be kidnappers. Dr. Chen, showing surprising presence of mind in the face of danger, began using medical equipment to create obstacles, buying time for security to arrive. Craig and Merrick found themselves back-to-back, their new hybrid physiologies humming with energy. As the fight spilled out into the corridors of the moonbase, they realized that the next few moments would determine not just their fate, but potentially the future of human-Yadaran relations. The sound of running footsteps echoed through the hallway as reinforcements approached. Craig's patches pulsed in a complex pattern, somehow instinctively knowing how to coordinate with the incoming security forces. Merrick's enhanced reflexes allowed her to dodge a blast from one of the intruders' weapons, the energy bolt scorching the wall behind her. As the battle raged on, Craig and Merrick found themselves at the center of a storm, their unique abilities both a blessing and a target. The outcome of this conflict hung in the balance, with the fate of two worlds resting on their shoulders. The hybrid patients found themselves at the epicenter of a chaotic storm, their unique abilities both a blessing and a target. Craig's bioluminescent patches flared with intensity as he focused his newfound abilities. Instinctively, he began pulsing complex patterns that synchronized with the incoming security forces. The hallway filled with a mesmerizing dance of blue light as Craig's body became a living communication beacon, coordinating defensive efforts with unprecedented efficiency. Beside him, Marek's enhanced reflexes came to life. An energy bolt from one of the intruder's weapons sizzled past her head, scorching the wall behind her. With fluid grace, she ducked and weaved, her movements precise and powerful. Her enhanced strength allowed her to grapple with an attacker twice her size, effortlessly throwing him across the corridor. Commander Zax's mandibles clicked rapidly as he barked orders, his military training kicking into high gear. He positioned himself strategically, using his bulk to shield Craig and Marek from direct fire while organizing a counteroffensive. Dr. Chen, her usual composure replaced by fierce tenacity, proved surprisingly resourceful in the face of danger. She quickly repurposed medical equipment, creating makeshift barriers and using chemical compounds to disorient the attackers. As the battle raged on, a stray blast struck a vital control panel. Alarms blared as the base's life support systems began to fail. The air grew thin, and Craig felt his lungs burning with each breath. "Oxygen levels critical," Dr. Chen shouted, her voice strained. "We need to restore air circulation immediately." Craig's mind raced, his human ingenuity melding with his new Yadarin abilities. He turned to Marek, his patches pulsing with urgency. "I have an idea," he gasped, "but I'll need your help." Together, they fought their way to the environmental control room. Craig's fingers flew over the console, his bioluminescent patches glowing in sync with the system's interface. "We can reroute power from non-essential systems," he explained, his voice hoarse from the thinning air. "But we'll need to manually open the emergency airlocks to equalize pressure." Marek nodded, understanding immediately. With her enhanced strength, she grasped the manual override lever, muscles straining as she forced the airlock open. The sudden rush of air nearly knocked them off their feet, but the base's oxygen levels began to stabilize. Their moment of triumph was short-lived. A high-pitched whine filled the air, and suddenly Craig felt his feet leaving the ground. The anti-human operatives had activated a device that interfered with the base's artificial gravity. Chaos erupted as both defenders and attackers found themselves floating uncontrollably. The battle transformed into a surreal, three-dimensional melee. Craig used his bioluminescent patterns to signal security forces, helping them adapt to the zero-gravity conditions. Marek's enhanced agility proved invaluable as she propelled herself off walls and ceilings, outmaneuvering the disoriented attackers. She grabbed floating debris, using it as improvised weaponry to disarm and subdue the intruders. Dr. Chen's eyes widened as she recognized the danger posed by the gravity disruption. "If we don't stabilize soon, the structural integrity of the base could be compromised," she shouted. A Yadarin technician named Krell pushed his way through the floating chaos. "I can help," he called out. "I have experience with gravitational systems." Together, Dr. Chen and Krell worked feverishly to counteract the device's effects. Their fingers danced across control panels as they raced against time, the base groaning ominously around them. Meanwhile, Commander Zax had cornered the leader of the anti-human operatives, a high-ranking Yadarin official named Vex. Their confrontation had led them to the main control room, where they now faced off in a tense standoff. "Why, Vex?" Zax demanded, his mandibles quivering with emotion. "Why betray everything we've worked for?" Vex's compound eyes flashed with defiance. "Worked for? You mean our subjugation? Humans will be the death of our culture, our way of life." Zax's voice softened, taking on a pleading tone. "Can't you see the potential? The shield that saved us all was only possible through cooperation. Craig and Marek's hybrid abilities show us a future where we can be more than we ever imagined." As Zax and Vex's confrontation reached its peak, Craig and Marek found themselves working in perfect synchronicity. Craig's bioluminescent patterns pulsed rapidly, creating a visual language that Merrick instinctively understood. Her enhanced neural pathways processed the information at lightning speed, allowing them to coordinate their actions with uncanny precision. Together, they outmaneuvered the remaining operatives, herding them towards the control room where Zax and Vex were locked in their standoff. With a final, perfectly timed maneuver, Craig and Merrick burst into the room, flanking Vex and cutting off any chance of escape. Vex's shoulders slumped in defeat as he realized he was outnumbered and outmaneuvered. The gravity slowly returned to normal as Dr. Chen and Krell succeeded in neutralizing the disruptor device. As the immediate threat subsided, the full extent of the damage became apparent. The moon base was in disarray, with multiple systems offline and structural integrity compromised in several sections. Craig and Merrick found themselves uniquely suited to assist in the repair efforts. Their hybrid physiologies allowed them to withstand the harsh conditions caused by the battle's aftermath. They worked tirelessly alongside human and Yadaran crew members, their combined abilities proving invaluable in restoring critical systems. As news of the attack spread, the political landscape began to shift dramatically. Ambassador Lauren's voice crackled over the communication system, his tone urgent. "The exposure of this anti-human faction has caused an uproar back home," he reported. "There are calls for greater transparency and cooperation between our species." Craig and Merrick exchanged a look, their newfound connection allowing them to communicate volumes without words. They understood that their actions had not only saved the moon base, but potentially paved the way for unprecedented cooperation between humans and Yadarans. However, as Dr. Chen began to outline plans for a comprehensive study of their hybrid condition, reports started coming in of protests and isolated incidents of violence on Epsilon Prime and other colonies. Extremist groups on both sides viewed the hybrids as a threat to their species' purity. Craig's bioluminescent patches pulsed with concern as he turned to Merrick. "What happens now?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Merrick's eyes, a mesmerizing blend of human and Yadaran features, met his. "I don't know," she admitted, "but whatever comes next, we'll face it together." As they stood amidst the bustling activity of the recovering moon base, Craig and Merrick realized they were at the center of a growing debate about the future of human-Yadaran relations. Their unique status as hybrids made them both invaluable assets and potential targets. The immediate crisis had passed, but the challenges ahead were just beginning to take shape. As Dr. Chen approached with a datapad full of preliminary test results, Craig and Merrick braced themselves for the next chapter in their extraordinary journey. Extraordinary journey. As they exchanged glances, a message from Ambassador Lauren appeared on the main view screen. "Craig, Merrick," the ambassador's face was etched with concern. "I'm afraid we need to move you immediately. Your presence here has become too risky. We're arranging transport to a secure research facility on Epsilon Prime." Within hours, Craig and Merrick found themselves aboard a sleek shuttle, hurtling through space towards the human colony world. The journey was tense, filled with uncertainty about what awaited them. Upon arrival, they were escorted to a state-of-the-art complex nestled in a secluded valley. Dr. Ilara, a tall woman with piercing green eyes, greeted them at the entrance. "Welcome to the Joint Species Research Center," she said, her voice warm but professional. "We've been eagerly awaiting your arrival." The facility buzzed with activity as human and Yadaran scientists worked side by side. Craig's bioluminescent patches pulsed with curiosity as he observed the harmonious collaboration. Over the following weeks, Craig and Merrick underwent a battery of tests and examinations. Dr. Ilara and her team meticulously documented every aspect of their hybrid physiology. One morning, as Craig stood before a holographic mirror, he noticed something extraordinary. His bioluminescent patterns had become more intricate, swirling in complex designs across his skin. "Fascinating," Dr. Ilara murmured, recording the changes. "Craig, try to convey a message using only your patterns." Concentrating, Craig focused on a simple greeting. To his amazement, Merrick's eyes widened in understanding. I could read that," she gasped. It was as clear as spoken words. Meanwhile, Merrick's own abilities continued to evolve. During a physical assessment, she effortlessly lifted a weight that would have challenged even the strongest human or Yadaran athlete. Your muscle density and neural responses are off the charts, the Yadaran physiologist Dr. Zarel remarked in awe. As news of their development spread, Ambassador Lauren recognized the potential impact on interspecies relations. He arranged a series of public appearances, hoping to showcase the benefits of human-Yadaran cooperation. Their first interview was broadcast across both human and Yadaran networks. Craig's bioluminescent patterns danced beneath his clothes as he spoke, captivating the audience. "We represent the best of both worlds," Merrick added, her enhanced grace evident in every movement. "Our existence proves that our species are not just compatible, but complementary." However, not everyone viewed their hybridization positively. As Craig and Merrick left a public forum on Epsilon Prime's capital city, a commotion erupted in the crowd. "Abominations!" a voice shouted. Craig's patches flared in alarm as he detected movement in his peripheral vision. Time seemed to slow as a figure lunged towards them, a weapon glinting in the sunlight. Merrick reacted with lightning speed, her enhanced reflexes allowing her to intercept the attacker mid-leap. Simultaneously, Craig's bioluminescent patterns flashed in a rapid sequence, alerting nearby security forces. Within seconds, the would-be assassin was subdued. The incident sent shockwaves through both human and Yadaran societies. In response, the Yadaran High Council and human colonial government agreed to form a joint task force to address the growing tensions. Commander Zax, his mandibles clicking with grit, was appointed to lead the Yadaran contingent. "We cannot allow fear and ignorance to undo all we've accomplished," he declared. Colonel Reeves, a stern-faced human officer, was chosen to head the human side. "Our priority is to investigate reports of unauthorized hybrid experiments," he briefed his team. "We have reason to believe rogue elements are attempting to replicate the process that created Craig and Merrick." As the task force began its work, Dr. Alara made a breakthrough in her research. She burst into the common room where Craig and Merrick were resting, her eyes bright with excitement. "I've figured it out," she exclaimed, holding up a holographic model of DNA strands. "The shield activation didn't just save us from the cosmic storm, it awakened a dormant genetic compatibility between our species." The implications of her discovery were staggering. Controlled hybridization could revolutionize medicine, enhance interspecies cooperation, and open up entirely new fields of scientific inquiry. However, as news of the breakthrough spread, it became clear that not everyone had altruistic intentions for this knowledge. Corporate envoys began arriving at the research center, their offers of funding thinly veiling their desire to profit from hybrid traits. Military officials from both species expressed interest in the strategic applications of enhanced hybrid soldiers. Ethical debates erupted across human and Yadaran societies, with impassioned arguments on all sides. Amidst the growing political and scientific turmoil, Craig and Merrick found themselves struggling with their evolving identities. They were no longer fully human or Yadaran, yet they were more than simply the sum of their parts. One evening, as they sat watching the twin moons of Epsilon Prime rise over the horizon, Merrick turned to Craig. "Do you ever wonder what we are?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Craig's patterns pulsed softly in the twilight. "We're the first," he replied, reaching out to take her hand. "Whatever comes next, we'll face it together." Their moment of quiet reflection was interrupted by an urgent message from Commander Zax. The task force had uncovered a network of black market labs conducting illegal hybrid experiments. "We're launching a series of raids," Zax informed them, his compound eyes glinting with intensity. "But our intel suggests the main facility is hidden on a remote asteroid. We could use your unique abilities on this mission." Craig and Merrick exchanged glances, a silent communication passing between them. They knew the risks, but also understood the importance of their involvement. "We're in," Craig responded, his patterns flaring with perseverance. As they prepared for the mission, donning specially designed combat suits, Craig and Merrick realized that this operation could change everything, not just for them, but for the future of human-Yadaran relations. The task force's ships approached the asteroid, their stealth systems engaged. Craig's bioluminescent patterns pulsed in a complex sequence, coordinating their approach with unprecedented precision. Marek's enhanced senses detected subtle anomalies in the asteroid's surface. "There," she pointed, her voice barely audible over the comm system. "A hidden airlock." As they breached the facility's outer defenses, Craig and Marek found themselves at the forefront of the assault. Their hybrid abilities proved invaluable as they navigated the maze-like corridors, neutralizing security systems and outmaneuvering guards. Deeper into the facility, they encountered desperate resistance from the extremist leaders. In the chaos of the firefight, Craig's patterns flashed a warning to Marek. She dodged just as an energy blast scorched the wall behind her. With the situation under control, Craig and Marek pushed deeper into the heart of the facility. What they found there stopped them in their tracks. Row upon row of stasis pods lined the walls, each containing a figure that was neither fully human nor Yadaran. The illegal hybridization program had already produced results. As alarms blared and the task force secured the facility, Craig and Marek approached one of the pods. Inside, a young hybrid opened its eyes, a mix of fear and confusion evident in its gaze. Craig's patterns pulsed gently, conveying reassurance. Marek placed her hand on the pod, her enhanced strength easily overriding the locking mechanism. As the hybrid stepped out, unsteady on its feet, Craig and Marek realized that their journey was a long way to go. They were no longer just individuals navigating their own unique existence. They had become pioneers of a new hybrid society. The rescued hybrids were quickly transported to shuttles, bound for medical treatment and evaluation on Epsilon Prime. As Craig and Marek boarded the last shuttle, they knew that the challenges ahead would be unlike anything they had faced before. The asteroid facility grew smaller in the viewport as they departed. Craig's patterns swirled with a mix of emotions: hope, uncertainty, and a deep sense of responsibility. Marek squeezed his hand, her enhanced strength gentle but reassuring. "Whatever happens next," she said, echoing his earlier words, "we'll face it together." As the shuttle accelerated towards Epsilon Prime, Craig and Marek prepared themselves for the next chapter in their extraordinary journey. The discovery of these new hybrids had changed everything, raising questions about the future of human-Yadaran relations and the ethical implications of hybridization technology. Their roles as the first human-Yadaran hybrids had expanded. Now, they were not just subjects of study, but leaders and mentors to a growing hybrid community. The weight of this responsibility settled on their shoulders as they contemplated the challenges that lay ahead. The shuttle docked smoothly at Epsilon Prime's main spaceport, its hull still bearing scorch marks from the intense firefight at the asteroid facility. As the airlock hissed open, Craig and Marek stepped out, leading a group of disoriented hybrids into the harsh light of day. Dr. Ilara waited on the tarmac, her team of medical professionals at the ready. Her eyes widened as she took in the sight of the rescued hybrids, each one a unique blend of human and Yadaran features. "This way," she said, gesturing towards a nearby building. "We've prepared a specialized medical bay to assess and treat them." As the hybrids were led away, Craig noticed the crowd gathering at the edges of the spaceport. Humans and Yadarans alike pressed forward, their expressions a mix of curiosity, wonder, and unease. He felt Marek's hand slip into his, her grip tightening as she sensed his anxiety. "They're scared," she whispered, her enhanced senses picking up on the crowd's emotions. Craig's bioluminescent patterns flickered in response. "So are the hybrids," he replied, his gaze following the last of the rescued individuals as they disappeared into the medical facility. Over the next few weeks, Craig and Marek found themselves thrust into new roles. No longer just subjects of study, they became mentors and guides to the rescued hybrids. They spent long hours in the medical facility, helping the newcomers understand and control their unique abilities. One afternoon, Craig sat with a young hybrid named Zara, whose skin shimmered with a faint silvery sheen. She struggled to modulate the intensity of her bioluminescence, her patterns flaring erratically. "Focus on your breath," Craig instructed, demonstrating with his own steady pulsing glow. "Let the light flow with each inhale and exhale." Zara closed her eyes, her chest rising and falling in a steady rhythm. Gradually, her bioluminescent patterns stabilized, matching Craig's serene tempo. "I did it!" she exclaimed, her eyes snapping open in excitement. Craig smiled, feeling a surge of pride. "You're a quick learner," he said, his own patterns brightening in response to her joy. Meanwhile, Marek worked with the hybrids who exhibited enhanced physical abilities. In a specially reinforced training room, she guided a muscular hybrid named Callow through a series of exercises designed to help him control his strength. "Gentle," Marek reminded him as Callow reached for a delicate sensor array. "Imagine you're handling something fragile, like a newly hatched Yadarin larva." Callow's brow furrowed in concentration as he carefully lifted the device, his movements becoming more precise with each attempt. As the days passed, Dr. Alara and her team made rapid progress in understanding hybrid biology. The diversity of the rescued individuals provided a wealth of data, leading to breakthroughs that benefited not just hybrids, but humans and Yadarins as well. One morning, Dr. Alara burst into the common area where Craig and Marek were having breakfast with a group of hybrids. Her face was flushed with excitement as she waved a datapad in the air. "We've done it," she announced. "We've developed a treatment that can stabilize the more volatile aspects of hybrid physiology, and the applications for pure humans and Yadarins are astounding." The news spread quickly, capturing the attention of both species. As public interest in hybridization grew, Ambassador Lauren saw an opportunity. He called a meeting with Craig, Marek, and key representatives from both human and Yadarin governments. "I believe it's time we consider a voluntary hybridization program," Lauren said, his voice calm but his eyes alight with the possibilities. "Open to both humans and Yadarins who wish to undergo the process." The proposal sparked intense debate. Some saw it as a natural progression, a way to bring their species closer together. Others feared it would lead to the loss of their unique cultural identities. Craig and Marek found themselves at the center of the discussion, their visible success as hybrids serving as a powerful argument in favor of the program. They attended public forums, gave interviews, and met with community leaders, sharing their experiences and addressing concerns. During this whirlwind of activity, Craig and Marek's relationship deepened. They found solace in each other's company, away from the public eye and the constant scrutiny of scientists and politicians. One evening, as they watched the twin moons of Epsilon Prime rise from the balcony of their quarters, Marek turned to Craig. Her enhanced vision allowed her to see the intricate dance of his bioluminescent patterns, conveying emotions too complex for words. "Craig," she said softly, I think I want to formalize our partnership." Craig's patterns surged with joy and surprise. "Are you asking me to marry you?" he asked, a smile spreading across his face. Marek laughed, the sound musical in the quiet night air. "I suppose I am," she replied, "though I'm not sure what a hybrid wedding would look like." They decided to create a ceremony that blended human and Yadarin traditions, symbolizing their unique status as bridges between the two species. As preparations for their union began, it seemed to capture the imagination of both humans and Yadarins, becoming a symbol of the potential for harmony between their peoples. On the day of their ceremony, Craig stood before a mirror, adjusting the specially designed formal wear that accommodated his bioluminescent patches. His patterns swirled with a mix of excitement and nerves. Suddenly there was a commotion outside. Craig rushed to the window, his patterns flaring in alarm. In the sky above, a massive shape was descending through the atmosphere. A ship of clearly Yadarin design, but larger than any he had ever seen. Before he could process what he was seeing, the door burst open. Ambassador Lauren stood there, his usually composed demeanor shaken. "Craig," he said, his voice urgent, "we need you and Marek immediately. A Yadarin seed ship, lost for centuries, has just arrived in the system. They've detected the hybrid biosignatures on Epsilon Prime and are requesting contact." Craig's mind raced as he followed Lauren out of the room. As they hurried through the corridors, he caught sight of Marek, still in her ceremonial attire, being briefed by Commander Zax. Their eyes met, and a silent understanding passed between them. Their wedding would have to wait. Once again, they found themselves at the forefront of a moment that could change everything for humans, Yadarins, and hybrids alike. As they boarded a shuttle bound for the orbital docking station where they would meet the seed ship's representatives, Craig took Marek's hand, their bioluminescent patterns synchronized, a visible reminder of the bond they shared and the challenges they had overcome together. The shuttle lifted off, carrying them towards an encounter that would redefine the future of their hybrid society and open up possibilities neither of them could have imagined. As Epsilon Prime grew smaller beneath them, Craig and Merrick prepared themselves for whatever lay ahead, secure in the knowledge that they would face it side by side.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.